Up that morning and I was like, you know what? I'm done. I don't need this anymore in my life. And made that decision at that point and haven't had a sip of alcohol since then. For me, the equation, they just don't mix. I just don't mix with alcohol. And I found that out about myself. The benefit of not drinking definitely outweighs the any sort of risk of going back down that hole that I was in. And so there's just so much joy and positivity in my life. I don't look back necessarily and regret any of that. I think in some ways it led me on the journey I'm on and led me in a way down the path I'm on in a positive way, right? I've experienced that. I've done that. I know I don't need to do it anymore.
So welcome to The Upward Spiral, the podcast where we explore the power of positive change and continuous improvement to help you create an upward spiral in your own life. In today's episode, we are diving deep into the power of quiet transformation, how personal growth can unfold without fanfare, and how leading by example can inspire others around you. So if you're feeling stuck, you're seeking motivation, or you're wanting to make a positive impact without feeling like you have to preach or have all the answers, this episode is for you. So I'm your host, Michelle O'Brien, and I'm really glad that you're here with us today. A few years ago, I quit drinking, and that decision set off a huge chain reaction of positive change in my life. I discovered that true transformation often starts within, and the most powerful changes aren't always the loudest, which is kind of ironic, me saying that, seen as like I'm talking about it loudly on a podcast. But a lot in the early days, a lot actually happened very, very quietly. So today I'm really thrilled to be joined by an incredible guest who embodies the idea of quiet transformation. He's a dedicated family man. He's a successful COO of a brand building agency and someone who has quietly turned his life around by giving up alcohol and embracing a path of personal growth. He's got this amazing, calm energy, killer smile, and a story that is truly going to inspire you. Please welcome to the show the fantastic Anthony DeBery. Anthony, welcome. I am so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited for this. I'm excited to talk to you and share my story a little bit. And it's going to be great. Looking forward to it.
Let's kind of just get into it. I always kind of love starting with an origin story, particularly kind of with episodes like this. I have kind of titled this chapter, The Crutch That Became the Cage, which sounds so dramatic, but I kind of love it. So tell us your story.
I was born and raised here in Maine and moved away after high school and went to college in Pennsylvania, lived in Philadelphia after that for a little while in the Philadelphia area. And then moved to New York to kind of kickstart my career. My brother was looking for a roommate at the time, and I was kind of just flailing around as you do a couple years after college, and decided, I'm going to take a chance and move to New York, and moved in with him and got started in my career in advertising. Started out working, as an assistant to some creative directors, and after that, kind of moved up the ranks and changed agencies a couple of times down there, and then moved back here to Maine about 8.5 years ago. So I've been back here in Maine for 8.5 years. So while living in New York, met my wife, Casey, and we had our first son, Oliver, down there. We have 2 boys now. So Elliot is 5.5. We had him after we moved back here to Maine. Alcohol was always a crutch, I guess you would kind of say, for me. I started abusing alcohol and other substances at a pretty young age, relatively. Age of 13. Had some older siblings that probably helped introduce me a little bit. But yeah, and sort of growing up, I was always a drinker and sort of a partier, and through college and after college, and it was a social thing, but it was also something that was definitely a bit of a crutch for me. I used it to feel more comfortable in awkward settings and uncomfortable settings, as I think a lot of people do. It was at a pretty jarring event. My father passed away very unexpectedly in 2014, and I really, really sunk into a pretty dark place, a place that I don't think a lot of people truly, close friends and family members truly understood sort of how dark of a place I kind of sunk into. I was having a really hard time sleeping, and I was using it as a way to just put me to sleep, to be perfectly frank. I would just kind of shrink myself to sleep every night, and it got pretty bad. My wife, she puts up with a lot. She's an amazing person, an amazing partner, and she put up with it, and she dealt with it, and she tried her best to help me through it, and she did a great job. And again, I had family and friends helping me through that tough time, but alcohol was really my crutch and the thing I leaned on very heavily. Not too long after my dad passed, my wife became pregnant with Oliver, our first son. And I think there was just so much emotion in that time. There's probably about 6 or 7 months after, well, it was more than that, actually. It was 9 months after my dad passed before I quit. And in that time period, there's just a lot of emotion. Obviously, it was Casey being pregnant and just so much change going on in my life. I was just leaning into it more and more. I was really just sort of, as I said before, just sort of self-destructing from the inside out and no longer knew what was going on. There's not like this moment that happened that kind of put me on the path that I'm on now and sort of turned me sober. It was really just I woke up one day and was like, I'm done with this. It was August 26th of 2015 was the day the last time I had a drink. And I just woke up that morning and I was like, you know what? I'm done. I don't need this anymore in my life. And made that decision at that point and haven't had a sip of alcohol since then. It was a month later to the day that Oliver was born. So he was born on September 26th. Just coincidentally, obviously, you can't plan that it's going to be a month, but it happened to be exactly a month after. I've never really looked back. I've never really, you have the urge, of course. Everyone always does have the urge, and I still have the urge. But the benefit of not drinking and definitely outweighs any sort of risk of going back down that hole that I was in. And so there's just so much joy and positivity in my life now, and back then there wasn't. So there's just no reason for me to go back to it. But yeah, that's sort of my journey down the hole and then kind of coming back out the alcohol.
Thank you for sharing.
I've ever really actually kind of said that out loud to anyone other than holding my wife dead.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad as well. And yeah, it's a difficult time. I want to ask a little bit about advertising and the industry. So I'm an ads exec. That is my background. So strategy and planning, advertising agencies, 15 years. I don't know. I'm sure it's the same in the US. Obviously, we've kind of got Mad Men as kind of that reference, and people who don't work in the industry go, "Oh, is it just like Mad Men?" And in a weird way, it kind of is. And there's a lot of drinking, a lot of other substances sometimes too. The drinks trolley would kind of go round, 4 p.m. There's a lot of kind of working late into the night, working on pitches, tight deadlines. Working on multiple accounts, you're jumping around kind of, one day you might be on hair care, a couple of hours later you're on automotive, a couple of hours after that, you're working on banking. It's fun. It's a young person's industry. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of work. But it's a lot of kind of work hard, play hard. And I loved it. I'm not, I absolutely loved my career in advertising. But it definitely was a lot, and it definitely contributed to me abusing alcohol for sure, and definitely drinking too much. Was that the case for you?
Yeah, I would definitely say, it's to your point, it's especially early in your career. I think and still to this day, some of the best friends I have are those bonds that made early in my career. Yeah, a lot of it is centered around that, right? You're to your point, we're working late, you're going out, you're partying, you're going to industry events, you're younger, you're earlier in your career. It's fun, it's cool, it's exciting, and so you kind of get caught up in it a little bit. Which again at the time, I think it was a lot of fun. I don't look back necessarily and regret any of that. I think in some ways it led me it led me on the journey I'm on and led me in the way down the path I'm on in a positive way, right? I experienced that or I've done that. I know I don't need to do it anymore, Well, you're 100% right. Yeah, the industry and the culture for sure, especially, working in New York and being younger and sort of being in that environment. Absolutely. Lots of, work our way, right? For sure.
Yeah. I was in London but I just felt like I was kind of trapped in this cycle. And I'll be honest, I wasn't doing very well at work because I was mostly hungover or just struggling, and then the weekends would come and I'd feel like I worked so hard during the week, I needed to let loose. And so I was kind of trapped in that cycle that eventually I was like, okay, I need to leave and move to Singapore, where we're kind of a relatively dry country. We're not a dry country, but, that there's a zero drug tolerance policy here. And it's just, there's still, a really great social life with agencies. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
And so that, and I, when I did come back after kind of having a year off traveling, taking some time out, when I did come back into that ad world, I set some boundaries and was just very like, look, I don't want to be doing the kind of weeknight heavy drinking every night, once in a while is fine. And set those boundaries going back into it quite early on.
It's been interesting, though, for me personally, my being here in Maine, I've only worked in the industry here at the agency here as a non-drinker, which is kind of interesting, right? Like I was in New York, I was in the last year or so I was down there, I had made that shift from being a heavy drinker and partier and going out and all that, and doing all that and leaning on it that way. The last year down there is when I made that transition. I had the Oliver at home and I had made that commitment to myself and my family that I was going to put that behind me. That first year down there was hard in a lot of ways. Being up here, no one here knows me that way, which is kind of interesting. It's almost like I have to remind myself of that sometimes. You know what I mean? That last year down there in New York was really hard. You kind of have those like bursts of everything. I used to always still say to friends of mine or people I know that are giving it up, and they're you have conversations and they ask me questions. What's the hardest part? And I always say it's like that first thing that you do, right? It's like, for me, it was a couple weeks after I gave it up, in between that month period there when Oliver was born, I had to go to a wedding. Casey couldn't come with me, right? She's 9.5 months pregnant. I went by myself. That was that first true test for me. Here I am at a wedding, bunch of friends, by myself, no date, right? And this in this environment, and here I am not drinking in this environment, was a huge test for me. And I kind of knew once I got through that if I could get through that, and I could get through that experience, it's like, all right, well, that was really hard. And so I remember it very vividly. And so, yeah, so I think being able to power through that and get through that and that last year down in New York and all the challenges, sort of, making that transition, and people went from knowing me as someone that, would go get a beer after work or 5 beers after work usually, to, I'll come hang out, but I'm going to get a Diet Coke. And it's like, so it's just that sudden shift. And I'm sure I was way more self-conscious of it than anyone ever thought of. Everyone immediately, no one's thinking of it. You always think that people are thinking of it more than you are. No one's really thinking. They give you, they give you a little crap the first time, and then it's like they don't care. They added it. You're doing your thing, but you definitely feel the pressure. You put the pressure on yourself, and I definitely put that pressure on myself. And it took me a long time to really sort of start to become comfortable in those settings. And still to this day, there's times where I think to myself, man, this would be a lot easier, right? If I could have a drink and kind of, get rid of the nerves and, kind of make it easy and sort of you find other ways, at least I do in this, or find other ways to sort of calm those nerves and you sort of get comfortable on those environments.
Yeah, it's so funny though, that there were so many milestones, and for me, the milestones were never counting the days or the months. The milestones were the events.
Yeah.
A big one, and I think I was probably 18 months into it, was my sister's bachelorette weekend. And I was just like, how am I going to do this? Just, a group of women for a whole weekend just doing activities that were all about drinking. And And I just started getting the non-alcoholic wines and beers and got stuck in and had like the best time. But then followed by her wedding, and weddings are a big one, right? They can be long days as well, and the strangers, like might know half the wedding, we don't necessarily know the other half, and so it's But again, it was like, right, I can get through that. Okay, I'm going to go to a festival. I'm going to go to a club. I'm going to see a DJ, or I'm going to see this group of people that I know are particularly boozy, or I'm going to go on a boat party, and gradually, like all of these things that you're doing for the first time sober, when you do them, and the caveat is like when you actually do them and actually have a good time, you're like, the sense of achievement afterwards is like, oh shit, like I can really do this, and oh yes, I don't drink anymore. I'm a non-drinker. This is cool, right? Like it's wild, and they stack up, and things that you right at the beginning of your sobriety, you think, God, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to go out. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to enjoy the same things I enjoyed before. And then slowly, one by one, you take them back off, and you're like, okay.
And you find out, I think too, you kind of find out who your people are too. And there's a lot of people, again, like I wouldn't say I lost friends, right? I think what ended up happening was there were people that was the only connection I had with that, right? And so what ends up happening, and for me, I think it's a little bit of a unique situation where I was also going through that transition of becoming a father at the same time, which naturally your friend group and your circles and your social life completely changes. Obviously, you have a child, so it was compounded. But I will say, after coming back into the fold after those first few months of hell with the first child, you find out quickly who your real friends are, and the ones that are still calling and you're still hanging out with, and you're doing stuff that's not always related to drinking. It really struck me how much of my social life was centered around drinking, whether it was everything I was doing, I needed a drink to feel comfortable, or it was literally the events were centered around, let's go walk around the East Village on a Saturday afternoon and just go bar hopping. Okay. And that's no longer the center activity in your afternoon on the Saturday. It's like, well, what do you replace that? Again, I was lucky, I think, is to becoming a new father at that same time. It kind of obviously like it forced me to have to do that. So I think others that are going through that struggle and those first couple of months when it's like the first, to your point, right? The first wedding, the first concert, the first sporting event, the first night out to dinner with a bunch of your friends, whatever it is, and those are always the hardest. And that's what I always kind of say, like I said, to friends or other people I know or people that have reached out to me that are looking to maybe start on this journey. It's like getting through the first of everything is always down. I think, from my experience, anyway, the hardest part.
But it's also interesting that sometimes you do these things and you're like, God, like that's really boring without alcohol. It's like, I don't want to go and sit in a pub for like 8 hours.
Yeah, but you also find too, and I don't know if you found this as well, but I also find I have a little bit more of a like sort of I don't give a shit about stuff. Like I'll go out and do karaoke with friends, even though I'm the only sober one, and they're all drinking because they aren't as aware as to what's going on. You know what I mean? So they're not like, I might be self-conscious, but they're not. They're not doing their thing. So it's like, so you kind of it goes both ways a little, I would say.
Yeah. I always thought I needed to drink to dance because I'm a horrible dancer. Like I can't even clap in time. We'll be at a concert and my husband is like, you're not even clapping, like with everybody else, stop. Yeah. Horrible dancer. But I actually thought I was never going to dance again in sobriety because I always needed to drink to dance. And it's been the total opposite. I actually have so many less it's given now, which is wild. Like I didn't ever think that I would be like the first one on the dance floor sober.
Yeah, but that put yourself back in my shoes. Where your first event, not drinking, is a wedding where you don't have where your wife can't go, so you're by yourself. You talk about being scared of the dance floor. that was I can, still scared of that.
Yeah, weddings are great though because you can bring out like all the bad moves and it's fine. Just talking on friends as well, like I don't know. For me, I had some friends who just didn't get it and couldn't understand and would still be like, "Go and just have a drink," and they just weren't there yet. And then I had more, but I'd say more friends and more people were like curious. And actually more people were like, "God, thank God you're not drinking tonight. I don't want to drink either." And a lot of people were feeling the same. They were like, "This isn't serving me anymore, but I'm doing it because I feel like I have to, and like socially or for work or for whatever." And it's been so amazing to actually watch so many of my friends come on this journey with me. Maybe not to the full extent, and they've not necessarily given up alcohol completely, but they've cut down and they have been really grateful to be able to go out and do activities that aren't involving alcohol. And it's definitely made a lot of my friendships a lot stronger and a lot more real, in a way. Like I truly know what's going on with them, like on how they're really feeling about things, which I feel like I've become a better friend.
I totally feel that. It's funny. It's gone from originally and even more now, it's gone from going out for happy hour to going out and getting coffee at 8 o'clock in the morning before work, right? Or meeting up to work out at 6 o'clock in the morning. And like that, I feel like that's been a lot of the shift, I think, with me and some of my personal relationships, in that sort of same way. But yeah, I think, there was definitely a time where, some friends were kind of like, what's going on? Like, is this real? They're like, no, you're just doing a dry month. I'm like, no, I think I'm going to give this a shot. And then it's like 6 months later, it's like, you're still not drinking. And I'm like, no, I'm done. And then they like kind of can't believe it. But then over time it sets in. It just becomes sort of part of who you are and it fades away. And then, yeah, for me, it's been almost 9.5 years. And I've seen some of those friends and other, just acquaintances in my life come around and start to be curious and ask questions. And hey, how's that going? And this sort of like, how did you do it? Or hey, I'm thinking about giving it up. What do you think about that? And I never push anything on anyone. For me, I'll still, Casey loves a margarita. I'll still make her a margarita on a Friday night. I'm not against it at all. And if that's part of their life and that's what brings them joy, then all for it. I'm not here to try and tell anyone how to do anything or that one way is better or another. This has just been my personal choice because I know myself and I know, again, how self-destructive I was becoming. And for me, the equation, they just don't mix. I just don't mix with alcohol. And I found that out about myself. So there's plenty of people I know and close friends and family members as well that, full reset. Some it's been a reset for a little bit of time and then a sort of journeying back in. And so it's kind of run the gamut for me and the people in my life that I'm close with. But I will say there's very few close acquaintances I have, whether, very close friends or family members that haven't at least sort of like asked me questions about it, which is, I like to be able to answer those questions, and if it's something if I can impact anyone in a positive way and through a conversation, or even if they just have observed me or anything, and it has any impact on them in a positive way, that's to me is just the added benefit to the positivity it's brought to my life.
I think that's really what we want to talk about today as well, right? Yeah. Like the fact that we can do it quietly, which is ironic because I've got a whole podcast, which the catalyst was to stop drinking. But it's always been really important to me to not push sobriety on anybody. Like I'm not telling anybody you should be sober. Like what's important to me is like I became sober and had this huge kind of awakening and transformation that has come out of it. And I really enjoy talking about that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to judge anybody for drinking. Like my husband still drinks, even though he's doing 1 year. He's going to attempt to do 1 year. He's turning 40 this year, so he wants to get like fit. So I'm encouraging that. So that's great. But my family, a lot of my friends still drink, and I never want to be like, oh, you should be sober, and push that on anybody. And I think that's kind of really important. But also it is trying to find that balance to say, well, this is my story, and what happened after I stopped drinking was just incredible.
Yeah.
But it is hard to find that balance, and it's really hard to find that balance when I'm so enthusiastic and passionate about my sobriety, right? Like it has brought so many incredible things that I get scared sometimes. I'm worried that people are gonna misconstrue that, like that enthusiasm that I've got for what happened to me as being pushy and telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Like how have you found that balance?
It's interesting. I think my philosophy behind it is I find anyway, it seems like everyone always wants to tell everyone what to do. I think we kind of just live in a society, right, where everyone's got a very strong opinion about everything, and they want everyone to sort of follow behind their opinion or what they do. I try to, live a life that's a little more balanced in that sense. I'm not here to preach. I'm not here to, I don't live my life in a way where I'll be like, I need to tell people how to live their life. For me, it's more, as I said earlier, this is me. This is what I'm doing. And if there's someone out there that's observing what I'm doing and it can have a positive impact on them or it can influence them in some way, that's great. But to your point, so there's a balance there, right? Because how does somebody know, talk about it? I've never been a vocal person about it. There's people that I'm close with that don't know that I don't drink, right? Or at least if they do, it's not like official. It's like, well, we'll hang out and I don't drink. But they're like, is that guy not drink, or is he just not drinking today, or whatever? So there's definitely people in my life that don't necessarily know that it's a big part of my life, at least. And might sound kind of crazy, but you can almost kind of get a sense of it from some people. Like there's some people in the last couple of years in my life that it kind of seeks you out, or you seek it out. It's like it's almost like this weird, like sixth sense type thing. And it's like, I don't know if there's like a secret handshake somewhere that we all don't know exists, but exists. That's through body language or something. I don't know, but I do think that there has been times where people have reached out to me and like, I know you don't drink, and I'm like, how do you know that? Okay, cool. And do you have any advice? I'm thinking about giving it up, or I've been giving it up, and it's been like hard, or just what. And so and then you get together for a coffee and you talk about it, and then that person, you start to build a relationship with that person through that. And it's just another way to sort of build relationships with people. And so, yeah, I think, for me, it's never been a preachy thing where I'm out there sort of telling people that this is how you should live your life, or this is all the great benefit it's brought me. I think that people see how happy I am in my life, and, and they might draw a connection that potentially is because of the fact that I don't drink. Then that's great. That's a connection they're drawing. I'm not putting that out there on them.
Yeah. It's so funny you should say that. Like there's a quiet, like knowing. I feel like it's a quiet confidence, especially people who have been doing it for a while or who've never drunk. And you tend to see that kind of a quiet confidence in them. And I also think people who are maybe struggling with it or thinking it, or who tend to just pick up on the cues from other people. It's like, oh, that person's not drinking, or that person leaves early, or that, there's just that little, there's obviously like tells, right? And just the fact that you're not drinking. But it's funny you should say that. And I also think like attracts like, and over the last 2.5 years, I've attracted some incredible people into my life who've never drank, or who just don't drink, or who are prioritizing other things at this point in their lives. And, that's amazing as well. I've still got my core group of friends I've been friends with forever, and I love them all dearly, but you do naturally start to attract people who are on the same path as you. And as well as you realize so many people don't drink, like when you're kind of in your bubble, in your community, you think everybody drinks. you pop out of it, and it's like more than half the world don't drink.
Right. No.
Oh, right. Okay.
Or also too, I think there were times where I, without knowing, was the one that was probably leading the charge a little bit. Hey, let's go do this or that. I think you mentioned it kind of earlier. It's like when you were starting on your journey, it was like, hey, let's not, we got the girl not have a drink tonight, and the rest of them were like, oh, thank you for saying that. It's like, well, I do think that, without knowing it, when I was drinking, I might have been a little bit of an instigator in that. So I do think that, after giving it up, I wonder if that maybe had a little bit of a role in that as well.
Oh, for sure. I was like the first person that was like, pre-drinks? Like one for the road, let's have another, let's go out, let's do this, let's day drink. Yeah, I was always like the first. And I honestly am ashamed to say I gave people so much shit for not drinking.
Yeah.
Just have one, don't say more. I'm so embarrassed that I was kind of that person for a long time. Now, and I say this all the time, like now, if I'm going out with a big group and say there's like 10 of us at dinner, maybe more, I will always make sure I'm the first person to order my drink. And so I'll kind of get the waiter over quite early when everyone's still looking at the menu and still deciding. And I'll be like, right, okay, what non-alcs have you got? Okay, I'm going to have this. And I'm just make sure that people can hear what I'm ordering, because I will guarantee you half the table will follow the lead. So if the first person to order is going, right, let's get 4 bottles of wine, then everyone at the table feels like they've got to drink 4 bottles of wine. But if someone's brave enough to say, I'm going to have a non-alc, does anyone else want a non-alc? Does anyone else want a mocktail? I'll guarantee that half the table will choose the non-alc, and part of them will be relieved because they'll go, oh, thank God, I don't get drinks tonight. Someone else isn't drinking. Okay, great, the pressure's off. Or people go, you know what, I'm actually going to start with a non-alc, and then they probably will stay on that for the rest of the night. Or they'll move on to something later. And it's incredible to watch that shift. And I do it every time now.
No, I love that. I think that's, I think that's a great little anecdote, tip, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to steal that.
Just got to be like, and again, for us who've not drank for such a long time, like it's easy, right? But when you're new and you're trying this out and it's hard. That's quite an uncomfortable thing to do. But if you can do it, I'll guarantee you might get a bit of shit from 1 or 2 people on the table, but also I'll guarantee you other people will follow. Just maybe want to go back a little bit and talk about kind of the quiet climb. So like we talked a little bit kind of about the milestones and the mindset, but when you stop drinking, it brings up a lot of stuff. Like not immediately. And I would say that people who do dry January, it's incredible. You'll feel physically better for sure. You'll start sleeping better and you'll start seeing the benefit. But for me, you don't see the real change doesn't happen until you're kind of 6, 9, 12 months into it, and work often, not for everybody, but for most people, like that's where you have the capacity now to maybe taking a little bit of look at yourself and figure out who you want to be. But it comes, and I think I just want to kind of understand your journey, and I'm presuming you kind of did that quite quietly as well, right?
For me, it's a little unique, in the sense that it was like it was soon after, it was a month after I quit, was when Alder was born. So I had the whiplash of that at the same time. So while that first month, I definitely can very, very, very easily remember, and my sleep improved drastically. That obviously went off a cliff, right? The day he was born, and has yet to return. It may never return. But I do remember very specifically my sleep was improved almost immediately. I lost 30 pounds in the first 6 months. That's when I was drinking. Because it was just the drinking, right? It's you have that drink, and then, before you know it, you're ordering a pizza at 11:30 at night. And then you're passing on the couch with, a bag of chips on your stomach, right? And it's like, it was awful. It was a bad place. It was a really bad place. Wasn't working out. You're hungover. You're not getting up and working out, right? You're not taking care of your body. And also too, and I'm sure there's tons of science out there behind this, but your body can't recover, right? You're drinking, your body can't recover. If you do work out, you're not getting the full benefit of it because your body doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to process it and recover from it and see the true benefit of it. Physically, definitely felt a pretty immediate impact. And mentally as well, physical and mental obviously go very hand in hand. and the sleep being a big piece of that. I also had the joy of my first son being born right around the same time. So I think chemically, maybe I was a little bit lucky because I had that sort of replacement to kind of come in and help lift me back up immediately. I wasn't in that space where, okay, I've quit drinking. I need to find something to replace that high you get from it. I had that. So I do feel very lucky that I had that sort of baked into my journey. That being said, there's inevitably there's an end to that, right? And at some point it's like, well, it all kind of wears off at the same time. And that's where I think the biggest struggle was for me, right? Because it's, okay, well, it's been 4 or 5 months of no drinking. Okay. Yes, I've been feeling, the positive physical effects and some of the mental effects, but okay, the newness of having a kid is, not over. It's never over. It's always new. Every day is new with them. But maybe the novelty newness of it, if that makes any sense, was starting to wear off. And here I am in this. That's why, and still obviously dealing with, the loss of my father that had just been over a year before. And so I do remember that that spring. So I quit August 26th of 2015. That spring of 2016, that was coming. That was really hard time for me. It's also coming out of winter, staying inside a lot with the new baby, all that sort of stuff. I do remember that spring being really hard, very specifically to kind of like go through and. I've never, been in, a program, but I understand too. It's like every day, and I believe this, every day is a, you have to make it the day to get to the next day, and every day is a struggle. Some days more than others. I do remember very specifically that spring of 2016, probably 7 months after, I started drinking something really, really caffeine made, and so, you kind of just find the moments that can help you through it in those days. The competition component of it for me was I have to make it through this day. I think that's sort of that same, that sort of every day is its own struggle, or it's like every day is the next step in the journey, whatever. For me, it kind of manifested itself through sort of being that competition with myself every day. Okay, each day I can make it. I'm not going to go back now. I've made it, or I've added another day to the competition here. It's like, well, if I undo it at this point, it's like I'm giving up that much more, if that makes any sense. So I think it kind of became a little bit of a game for myself in my own head to kind of like, okay, get through today, get to this event, get to this thing. And that spring, it was definitely, I remember every day was really hard.
I struggle when I get that summer's day feeling. Yeah. So like having grown up in England, in Manchester, like it's grey city, but then when the sun comes out, the whole like city comes alive. Like everybody's just happy and high, and everyone finishes work early. Beer gardens are overflowing, and it's just a vibe, and it's so good. And obviously, I live in forever summer now in Singapore. It's 35 degrees every day. But every now and then, when I just get that feeling, it's like that rosé all day kind of feeling. Yeah. And I'm like, oh God, I just want to go and sit in a beer garden with my friends and drink rosé. Yeah. That is honestly one of the only times where I'm like, this a little bit.
I get those moments. For me, it's we're pretty outdoors, into hiking and fishing and skiing and all that sort of stuff. So for me, it's when I go fishing, I find that it's always like, okay, it's just. They kind of go hand in hand. And I think when I was still a heavy drinker, that's, when you're outside doing that type of stuff where you finish a hike and it's like crack a beer kind of thing, that celebratory. Yeah. And so, yeah, so I think for me that I kind of, I can see where you're coming from there. And for me, that's probably like when I go fishing, it's like, okay, well, it'd be nice to sit here and have beer and hang out. So I'm always with my brother or with a close friend. And it's like, you kind of just having that time, and it's like your alone time and your alone space, and you're out there doing your thing. And yeah, that's definitely when I think of some of the times where I probably had one too many, is probably some of those times. So those are the ones for me that probably get me the most.
The first kind of like 6 months, I didn't tell anybody because I was just like, well, I'm training for a marathon. And then honestly, after that, I really did try to drink again, and it just didn't like the taste. It wasn't for me. And I think it had really set in that this isn't what I want to do anymore. And actually, this is what I'd been feeling about alcohol for a long time. But it still took another 6 months of me quietly working through it on my own, even with like my family and my friends, and just being like, okay, I'm not drinking tonight. I just don't feel like it. Or, making an excuse as to why I wasn't drinking. And it took me over a year of being sober to actually say the words, I'm done. Like I really am.
Mm-hmm.
And I need you all to take me seriously.
Yeah.
When I say like, I'm not going to drink anymore. But again, it was, I had to figure that out in my own head. I needed that year of like quietly working away from it. And then it took, another 6 months or so before I was like, okay, I actually want to talk about this now. And I want to talk about life after alcohol. And that's kind of where the podcast came about. Our podcast came about because the transformation was so significant. Did you tell people in the beginning, like how was that first year for you? We've talked about quiet transformation.
I think the excuse I used was solidarity with my wife. I had that. She's pregnant. Oh, I'm not drinking. I'm doing, Casey can't drink, so I'm not drinking with her, kind of thing was my excuse for that month, right?
She might go into labor at any point. I'm on standby.
She can't have a drink. She's not here. She can't have a drink, so I'm not going to have a drink in her honor. It was really more than anything, right? She's pregnant. So that was my that month when I was, that was that first month when I was, that was my sort of excuse, if you will. And then coming back off of it, it was just I couldn't like it. I physically, I think I just told people like, listen, there's no way I can. If I get drunk tonight, I have to get up in 3 hours because my kid's gonna wake. It's just like for me, I had that like kind of baked in. So from a timing perspective, I think for so many reasons, it was the right time for me. It was the right time for me because I needed to focus my energy on this big change in my life. I was coming out of being in that incredibly dark space. There was also some people in my life, those closest to me. I say I was sort of self-destructing from the inside out. That was my perspective. There was definitely those closest to me in my life that I think were relieved when they kind of started to understand. I didn't go out there and say, this is a new thing I'm doing. For me at that time, I think there was also that fear of failure as well. I didn't want to declare this because as soon as I declare it, as soon as I make that commitment, those closest to me are going to start to hold me accountable to it. So I kind of skirted around it because I didn't want to make the commitment because I didn't know if I could do it, right? It's a really hard thing to do. So for me, there were people in my life that were, I think, sort of relieved when they found out about it. So like, oh, good. Like he's going to try and do something about this. I don't think that a lot of them thought I was going to sort of fall through with it and it was going to be a permanent thing. And still to this day, some of those closest to me, are you really never going to drink again? And it's like, I don't have a reason to. I can't sit here today and say that I'm going to. I can't sit here and say today I'm not going to either. There might be an event. There might be a thing. When my kids get married, maybe I'll do a toast. I don't see myself ever going back to being someone that drinks. I might have a sip of champagne for a toast when my kids get married, but that being said, Casey and I have a bottle of champagne in the house that we got in 2011 that we were going to drink when we bought our first house. And it's unopened, right? So there's been plenty of times to sort of break the streak, if you will, that I haven't. So it would have to be something pretty substantial, I think, to sort of go back on it at this point. I trust myself. To be perfectly honest, right? Like I don't drink non-alcoholic beers. I try and stay away from the mocktails personally because I don't know, maybe what happens if I missed out on the whole IPA sort of craze. I quit drinking before that was a big thing. And it's a big thing now where if I try a non-alcoholic IPA and I really love the taste, okay, that scares me, to be perfectly honest. So, yeah, I think, the struggle continues, right? It's different now. And in some ways it's easier. I shudder to say it's easier because it's not easy. There's nothing easy about it. It's just different now than it was at the beginning. But I'm still definitely very, very aware of it. And again, whether it's outwardly facing a big piece of my life, internally, it absolutely is a big piece. And it's something I just struggle with every single day. And So yes, I don't know that I can't see an instance in my life that would be something that I would sort of, break the streak for. But who knows? Life brings all kinds of moments and challenges and celebrations.
You know what I love about this podcast episode versus some of the other ones that I've done is I've talked to a lot of people who have been in recovery, who have been in, on programs, either they've been doing AA or like kind of varying degrees of help, and a lot of them talk about the importance of community and sharing what you're doing and help holding yourself accountable and, working a program. And it's not always like that for people. It wasn't like that for me and for yourself. I think there's a way to be able to do this quietly. There's a way to, I think have this transformation without making it a big thing. Because you're right, like there's that fear of failure. And I think the reason why I didn't say the words "I don't drink" for that first year was, first of all, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, just like you. But also, like, I didn't want to set myself up to fail and then have the fear of failure on top of that, on top of the struggle that I was going through anyway. And it's just another way for people to think about it. Like, it doesn't always have to be public. It doesn't always have to be a program or a community.
Right.
It can be something that you can do quietly and figure out on your own. Mm-hmm. And obviously, if the struggle does get too difficult, then of course, there are so many different options for help.
That's really important. I agree with you. Really important to call that out. It's like everyone has their own journey and their own way through this. Some people's journey is not a straight line from sobriety to the end. Some people's journey goes like this in sobriety and not. And they develop a healthier, maybe their goal for sobriety is just to develop a healthier relationship with alcohol, right? They're someone that's abusing it heavily and they're using it as a crutch. And they just want to find a way to have a responsible, healthy relationship with it. And that's their journey. That's totally okay too. I'm not here to say one is better than the other. I just know a healthy relationship with alcohol is not on the cards for me. Therefore, for me, that healthiest relationship is to this end the relationship, right? That sometimes is the healthiest relationship, which is me. Talking about community, no, I didn't do a program. I didn't do AA. I'm not in any of those programs. I haven't done any of that. I will say community for me took form of my closest friends and family, right? That was my community, whether they knew it or not. Some of them did know it. Some of them didn't know it. Some of them, Casey, she obviously knew, right? How supportive, she was of me through the journey. And, my brothers, obviously, my mom, very supportive of me through this journey. Some very, very close friends of mine that were very supportive of me through the journey. Through the beginning of my journey, I should say. Absolutely were my community. It looked much different than I think more of a traditional, maybe sort of someone that's in recovery's community. But that was my community. And I kind of developed that around myself and sort of leaned on and sort of leaned on those relationships and, probably pulled more from some of those relationships than I've been able to give back. To be perfectly honest, and I'm very, very thankful for that. With people, whether they know it or not, had a huge, huge impact on my life while supporting me through some of those early stages and through some of the medium stages and even through someone today, right? Like I said earlier, it's a never-ending journey. So some of them know it, some of them don't. But yeah, and I think that's why, I've been a little more vocal about this just in the last few months. Like, I do think that there are people out there that are struggling, right? There's countless people out there struggling with this. And some of them are talked about it, some of them don't talk about it. But that's where I think where I've landed for myself is if I can do this with you, right? And someone out there, whether I ever know it or not, listens to this or sees this, or I did a LinkedIn post last summer that had some pretty good engagement and people reach out to me. I don't know who they are. And I say, oh, thank you. You're your words, have helped me. I don't know who these people are, but it's like, it has had an influence on them. Right. So that's great. It's like, okay, but how do you do that in a way, as we talked about earlier, with balancing it without being preaching, saying this is the right way? It's like, that's where I think I continue to struggle, is like, how can there be authentic ways to just have natural, authentic conversations, or natural, authentic ways just to go about my life and sort of lead by doing, not lead by saying, kind of in a way, which I think, so I'm so appreciative to chatting with you today. And if there's anyone that listens to this or sees this and it can have a positive impact on them, then like, great. And if not, that's great too, obviously. But yeah, that's where I think I'm at with my sort of journey today, I would say.
And you know what? I was just about to ask you, like, what would be the summary of this? And I think you've just put that so beautifully. And that's how I feel, and how I feel about the podcast now. Like, I'm loving the conversations I'm having, the stories that I'm getting to have the honor of kind of, uncovering and telling, and the people that I'm getting to meet. It's just amazing. And if each episode helps one person, that's enough. I'm just so grateful for you coming and talking to me today and telling your story. It's just another perspective on what an alcohol-free life can look like. And I think, it's amazing. I think everything that you've done for yourself and for your family is just incredible. And I wish you all the luck and everything to keep going.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thanks again for having me on and this conversation, and for allowing me to sort of use your podcast as my microphone. I hate to say that in whatever weird sort of way that it is. So thanks. Thank you very much.
Anthony, honestly, thank you so much for sharing your incredible story with us today. I think the journey is just a really powerful reminder that transformation can happen quietly, and by leading by example, you can have like a ripple effect far beyond maybe what you imagined. So I know our listeners are deeply inspired by your honesty and commitment to personal growth. To all of our listeners, if you're moved by Anthony's story, please share this episode with someone who might benefit from hearing it. Don't forget to subscribe to the Upward Spiral. I'm going to link to Anthony's LinkedIn and any other links below. So if you want to reach out to him and you've got any questions, please do so. Remember, every step you take towards positive change, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction to get that kind of upward spiral going. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.